The August 5th special meeting of the Pacheco Stormwater District. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so at this time, we will open it up for public comment. These are comments about any item that is not on the agenda. And I believe Victor has something to read ahead of this. Go ahead, Victor.
The Pacheco Stormwater District welcomes your comments. Each individual speaker will be limited to a presentation total of 3 minutes. When addressing the trustees via Zoom, phone, or in chambers, please state your name and county in which you reside for the record. Please address the trustees as a whole through the chair. If participating via Zoom, select the Participants tab and click the raised hand icon. If you are using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. When your turn arrives, you will hear that you have been unmuted. If you are participating in person at the chambers, please complete a speaker card identifying the item on which you wish to speak and provide your completed card to the clerk prior to consideration of the item. Speaker cards are available on the table at the entrance to the chambers. There appears to be for this item right now.
Comment, you said?
Yes, public. Correct.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Rochelle Bearley, you can please approach the podium.
Hello. I just wanted to talk about the list of our members. I was going over it. I think it was forwarded to you or by you at some point. And we have a lot of members that are not from the area, out of the area. So I wanted to address that and see how we can kind of clean it up. Because if they're not in the area, then they can't be active members. Is that correct?
Well, okay. So I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I think that's a list of all the property owners within the district.
That's correct.
And so they may or may not live in the district, but they do own property in the district. And I think that's pretty common, even I know on Lover's Lane, that there are many owners who don't actually live there. They rent out for agriculture or other purposes. So I think what we have, the list you're referring to is a list of owners. But you're right now, so that's one thing. But then in order to sit on this board, you have to be both an owner and a resident.
Okay.
So that's different. So I don't know if it's a question of cleaning up that list, because it is what it is, right? Those are the owners, and some of them live out of the area.
Okay, it looks like our district covers about 1,400 acres of total, which I was surprised about. That's quite large. And I just wanted to mention that I would be willing to write a kind of an introduction cover letter that we mail out to all of our district people, introducing what we're doing, and then get them in the future to hopefully attend our meetings. So
Okay.
I wanted to put that out there also.
Okay. Let me see. What do we have on the agenda for tonight? Well, we do have 5.8 is update on PSWD publicity and outreach. Okay. So we could discuss it more at that time. So, all right. Thank you, Rochelle. Is there any other public comment?
There appears to be no further public comment.
Okay, great. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Before we vote to approve the minutes from the last meeting, June 24th, I think there may be an error in the minutes. I'm looking at it here. And the minutes 5E says discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion. And then underneath it, it says the trustees had no significant developments regarding grant opportunities, but assured efforts were ongoing to identify potential funding sources. I think that that might actually, I don't think that that belongs with discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion, because on the agenda from that meeting, there was an item 5.6 that said update from advisory board regarding grant and other funding opportunities, but that is not on the minutes. So I think that description, the trustees had no significant developments regarding grant opportunities, actually belongs to that item, update regarding grant and other funding opportunities, and not discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion. Now, I don't remember much about our discussion of the proposed Pacheco Dam expansion. The only thing I remember is that we talked about inviting the group that was opposed, leading the opposition, and we decided that it might not be a bad idea to hear from them. That's the only thing I remember about our discussion of the dam expansion. So, do the other trustees remember that?
That is correct. I do remember that we didn't discuss a proposal regarding the expansion, but to invite somebody on the opposing view.
Right. Okay, and
We
then,
weren't making any decisions till we found what the opposite of.
okay, so I think what happened is that we just, the note taker just accidentally skipped. They put together two different items, the discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion and then the discussion of grant opportunities, which were two separate items, but I think they got combined into one in the minutes. So I'm not sure how, this is the first time that we've ever tried to correct minutes, so I'm not exactly sure what the proper procedure is.
Is Sean on the line?
Yeah, Sean, yeah, I'm on. You can adopt with that correction.
Okay,
So you just say it out loud, essentially.
okay,
Yep.
all right. Okay, so now I guess I will think of a motion here that says all of that we just said. Okay, so I move that we that we approve the consent agenda. Okay, so Sean, how do I do this now? Because usually we do the consent agenda as one group. So do we have to do them?
Yeah, you would have to do it individually now. Yeah.
right.
So you should do each one individually.
Okay, so why don't we first approve the acknowledgement of certificate of posting? So I move that we approve the acknowledgement of certificate of posting. Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so 4.1 is approved. Now we'll move to the meeting, the minutes from the June 24th meeting. I move that we approve the minutes with the following amendment. That under 5.E, discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion, it should be amended to state that the trustees agreed to invite opponents of the dam expansion to the meeting to state their case. And then there should be another item, which would be update from advisory board regarding grant and other funding opportunities. That should be added, and it should state under that item that the trustees had no significant developments regarding grant opportunities, but assured efforts were ongoing to identify potential funding sources. Okay, so is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the minutes are adopted as, with that amendment. Okay, we will now move to the regular agenda. And first up is an update regarding debris removal and levee repair.
All right, my apologies because our screens are not working. So for public attendees, at the end of this meeting, I'll print out the slides that I'm going to be presenting. So for those folks that are online, our screens are not operational, so I'm not sure if you can see us or not here. But all right, I will provide a few more details in just the slides, just since we don't have the slides. So item 5.1, update regarding debris removal and levee repair. I'm Steve Luke, Public Works Administrator for the County of San Benito. And regarding debris removal, so burn permits were obtained at all 3 sites for the debris to be burned. 2 of the 3 sites, the debris has actually been burned. There is some minor actual trash that needs to be disposed of that the county will help coordinate with that property owner. And interestingly, I would say 98% of the items removed from the creek were vegetation, branches, organics, and there was just a really, really small pile of I'll call, trash essentially. And so I would highly encourage any of the neighboring property owners, especially the upstream property owners from San Felipe Road, to try to make an effort to not allow some of their own vegetation to flow downstream, because that's pretty much what was taken out of the creek by our contractors. So let's see. The 3rd site, the debris is north of the levee, and it's at the northeast quadrant of Lover's Lane and Pacheco Creek. It is near Walnut Orchard. I'm not sure how healthy those trees are. So the county's reached out to CAL FIRE to, again, ask them if they have any curtain burners available. And what a curtain burner is, it's just a big metal box, essentially, that you can place organics in, maybe other things, but organics, and just, burn what's there, and it keeps it very contained and controlled. So CAL FIRE is supposed to respond this Wednesday, actually August 7th, and let us know if the district can borrow a curtain burner. CAL FIRE did not mention any kind of cost involved. So at this point, I don't know if there is a cost involved, but they're going to let us know by Wednesday if there's a curtain burner available. So that's the status of the debris removal. And we'll go into the FEMA part on the next item. Levee repairs. So regarding the levee repairs, there is a set of plans that's been put together. And the question for the trustees here is, one of the permitting agencies has requested that if we install rock slope protection, which is currently shown on the plans to be installed, if we were to install rock slope protection in the creek, and I might have mentioned this last time, but I don't recall, then we're actually going to have to perform a hydraulic study of the creek to make sure that the rock slope protection does not affect the hydraulics of the creek. It's basically riprap, yeah, essentially. It's just rock placed against the slope to help stabilize the slopes. Now, walking the levee in the creek, probably 80%, maybe more of the creek, there really is no rock slope protection. It is a very good thing, and it would be a very good thing to have installed. And FEMA will, pay for the installation of the rock slope protection because they think it is also a good idea. However, The hydraulic study will probably take 2 months to complete and cost approximately $15,000. And then hopefully, if that all goes well, we would be permitted to have it installed. Now, the other option, I talked to FEMA today, we don't have to install the rock slope protection because except for maybe a little bit here and there in the area, there really wasn't much there. There was a little bit in place, and a lot actually just downstream. There's quite a bit on the repairs that occurred in 2017. There's quite a bit of rock slope protection there, and there's a little bit on a couple of the sites existing today. But FEMA says we don't have to install the rock slope protection if we don't want to, the district, I should say. And so it's an option at this point. At the very least, we're going to finish reconstructing the levee itself that hasn't been completed. And the question for the trustees is, should we submit a permit to install the rock slope protection or not? And spend the $15,000 and wait 2 months to do that. And something to consider is if the district is successful in getting a grant at some point in the future, and we'll talk about one later, one thing we would definitely put in that grant is to install rock slope protection, as much as possible throughout Pacheco Creek. There's an area just downstream of the bridge on Lover's Lane that's eroding away and needs some rock slope protection or, something structural, I'll say. So if the district was successful in obtaining a grant, that would definitely be part of the grant. And we'll talk about one grant a little bit later, but I'm going to pause there. That's the status of the debris removal and levee repairs, the activities, and then we'll talk about the FEMA applications. I think it's on the next item, 5.2. So I'll pause there for public comment and trustee comment and all that good stuff. So.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I have a question. So if we decided to forego the rock slope protection at this time, then we would not, so of course we wouldn't have to pay the $15,000, but how much would that speed up the permit process? I mean, would we be basically ready to go with, and we're talking about a permit from the water board, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I don't know the timing of the water board, but they did say it would be much faster to process without the rock slope protection because they don't have to get their hydrologists involved to confirm our hydraulic study. Essentially, we would just be replacing what's there in kind is what they say. So they said it's a much simpler process is what their answer was at this point. So.
On the other hand, if we make it part of this repair, FEMA will pay for it, right?
Correct. And FEMA, just so we're all on the same page, FEMA's paying for 75%. The state pays for 25% of the remainder. So long story short, FEMA and the state pay for 94% of everything, essentially. So, and the rock slope protection, I think, well, anyway, I'll just leave it at that for if there's more questions. But.
Okay, so hold on, we'll take public comment in just a second.
Okay.
So, but this is of course only a relatively small portion of the levies. And so your point was that another possibility would be to apply for a grant to do rock slope protection throughout, or at least a large part of the.
As much as we could, whatever the grant would allow for. Yeah, we would definitely apply for as much as a grant would allow us to rock slope the whole stretch of the levees. Or if the district got a really large grant, you can do some creek structural walls and things. It just depends how much money. But rock slope protection is probably the most cost-effective structural enhancement to a levee.
So it's a good idea to do it.
Yeah. So
it's good regardless.
Correct.
Of whether it's needed for the permit or whatever. But, okay. Did the trustees have questions or comments?
So this would be only on the areas that were
damaged. That's correct. That's correct. It's
just on those little
just correct.
three.
Correct. just those segments is all FEMA is funding because just the damaged areas. That is correct.
This is Sean. In order to take action on this item, we'd actually have to re-agendize it because our agenda just says that we're going to give an update regarding the debris removal. So unless we have something in here that says that we're going to take action on it, then we need to do that in that way. So.
Okay, so we couldn't actually vote on this tonight anyway, then. We would have to vote on it at a future time. But anyway, Trustee Alfaro, you had a comment or question?
I have a question. Just in case they're going to send somebody to check the creek, right? And the places the levee broke, they're going to reinforce it. But as they find more areas they can think, is not strong enough, probably they can do the job too in those areas, right? Or no?
So if FEMA or the state could come back and just look at the areas we repaired. They won't be looking at areas along the whole creek.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's what you're asking, if they're just going to examine the whole creek. No, that would be kind of up to the district and other folks as they apply for grants to look at some of the other areas. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's open it up for public comment.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9.
Okay, Bill Floric on Lover's Lane, and Steve, I want to say, first of all, thanks for all your help and things. Rock slope protection, I can't emphasize more what we need there. The creek is in our area sliding off. We dodged a huge bullet back in January. We need, I don't know how else to emphasize it, but yet we got such a situation there that it's still, I think, an emergency declaration. It's got to be still an emergency declaration because we only got 4 more months: August, September, October, November, December. We got to get going on something. Otherwise, it's going to go. There's no ifs about it. It's when. Pardon me? New area? The what? Our area. Well, the one right on the other side of the bridge. Yeah, on Lover's Lane, yeah. On the west side of the bridge there where it's starting to fall apart. Some of the trees are falling in. Southwest corner, right. That's what I want to say. But I can't emphasize anymore that it's got to happen this year. Otherwise, the rains come in, it's going to go. So anyway, that's what I got. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Marcel Beerley, you can please approach the podium.
Okay. This is always a first. My name is Marcel, and last name Beerley, live on San Felipe Road. And what I have as a question would be on the hydraulic study, since that is only for the few 3 or 4 little sections, I think that's a waste of money. What I would like to see is the grant you were talking about to get as much as of the 26 miles of creek that we can. Is it possible to get drone footage of the weakest spots? I mean, this is ideal for drones or for a scanner. I mean, I have companies that I know that do scanners, and they scan the footbed and they map everything right out on the computer, and that's very affordable because you don't have to buy it. You just rent that equipment. We don't even rent it. Somebody does it for you. And with the drone footage, we would know where the weakest spots are, because I think what we cleaned out and fixed is pretty good. Yes, it needs the riprap, I agree, but I would like to, when we got flooded on San Felipe Road, it didn't really come that bad from the levee that broke. It came from behind the cherry orchard, and they were dumping dirt loads in there. Don't know really what the fix there was because it wasn't not on my radar, but it happened there. And once the water gets up high again, we see, but we can get a drone footage and really find out what, for me, that would be very interesting to see what are the weak spots. Just by chance, we met somebody way further up where the Pacheco Creek goes underneath the freeway. And right there, he had a flood in March. And that's because something was not fixed right. And so it starts right there, right at the source where Pacheco Pass freeway, where the water goes underneath it. And we're talking really 26 miles of this creek. I don't even know how many miles this district covers, but I don't think it's that large. So I think we need to expand it a little bit. I mean, all the way up there, they had area code 408. So it even changed counties. And I'm for expanding this group if we can and get some more and work on this grant. So my question on this grant or the idea of the grant, can we work on that? Can we get an estimate or can we work on this? Who do we talk to?
Marcel, I'm going to interrupt you because we actually have another agenda item specifically about grants.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking about it more then,
Perfect.
right, Steve?
Yep.
So
riprap for me is very good, but without the grant to do it just on these little 4 items, that's not going to do much.
okay, thank you.
Okay, there appears to be no additional public comment.
Okay, so, so we're in a situation where we cannot actually vote on this tonight anyway, but I suppose if there were a consensus that we didn't want, so Sean, I mean, this isn't on the agenda, but if we had sort of a consensus that said that we didn't want to move forward with the riprap at this time, could we give Steve direction in that regard?
Yeah, you can give general direction to staff, but you just can't make a decision as, to commit money and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I have a clarification, Sean, this is Steve.
Yeah.
If we're simply, so we understood that the trustees can't commit more money. So essentially they've already said, move forward with the project and the application. If we're just removing a small part of the scope from the application per their general consensus today, one way or another, is that okay? Because we're not going to add money if they decide.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, so I think given all of this, given the fact that we wouldn't even be able to approve this tonight, we'd have to wait until the next meeting or we'd have to call a special meeting. So that would be an additional delay on top of the 2 months that they've already quoted us. I think we should just take it out, the riprap for now, and try to pursue a grant to install it on a wider scale. But what does everyone else think?
I feel the same way. I just don't want it to be just on 3 little sites. I kind of need to see it throughout the whole length of the creek because we need the protection everywhere, not just on the 3 little sections. Well, they're not little, but.
I agree with that. We need more than 2 or 3 places.
Okay, the county has the direction from the trustees, so we'll proceed accordingly. And I concur. If we can get a grant and try to armor the whole stretch, that's the way to go. ASAP. And a couple of notes regarding the public comment. I'll reach out to our fire department because they're allowed to drone, at least over our county. I don't know if they can go into 408 or not, but they can do everything in our county our fire department and CAL FIRE, actually CAL FIRE might be able to go into 408, to assess fire hazards. And so they did that during the storms. So I'll reach out to them for drone footage and just see how far we can go. And it's pretty detailed. As the public commenter mentioned, that would be helpful. The second thing to keep on our radar is at the southwest quadrant of the creek, there is some erosion occurring that the county concurs needs some attention more than other places in the creek. So when we get to the other agenda item regarding update request to modify loan from San Benito County, and that was to, let's just say the loan, there's a few $100,000 remaining. I don't know if the supervisors have made any progress about using the extra $200,000, but hopefully in the next month or so, there will be some progress. And I would recommend that there's a few, a couple specific areas that need some help right away because they haven't had any levee restoration or levee enhancements or levee rebuilding. So I'll keep that on our radar, and hopefully we can all remind each other that if we do have the extra 200,000, that there might be some spots that need help sooner rather than later. So, but I'll chase down the drone footage as well. So.
Okay. So just one final thing on this item. So now that we've cleared up that we're not going to go forward with the riprap on just that area, can we submit the permit now?
We can. I'll have to change the plans a tiny bit, but it won't.
Okay.
It'll be quick. It's just removing that from the scope and the plan sheets. And yes, I'll submit it ASAP.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Can I get a date from you? Like an approximate, like end of this week?
Yeah.
Next
Matter
week?
of fact, yeah. It'll be this week, and
Okay.
I'll reach out we'll have to coordinate a little bit on I think it's $3,000.
Oh, right.
To submit the permit, but yes, it'll all be finalized this week. So.
Great. Fantastic.
It's ready to go, basically. So.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to 5.2, update on the status of the FEMA applications.
Okay. So, honest good, I guess maybe folks at home can see the slides, so that's good. Debris removal, FEMA applications. The burn permits have been uploaded, and the project is now in the environmental review stage. One thing that did happen in July of 2024, this last month, is that FEMA approved what they call a spending plan for the debris removal. And it just means that they think the cost estimate is reasonable. So I think total for the debris removal, I'm rounding, I think it's roughly $900,000. And so FEMA, their team has looked at it this past month, and they said that's a reasonable cost. So once it gets through the environmental review stage, I don't have an estimate on that, but the next stage is to go to being obligated for funding. So, but they did make some progress. They confirmed that the cost estimate was reasonable for the debris removal. Regarding the levee repairs, FEMA's environmental review team has made progress on the levee repair. And the project has gone from environmental review over to what they call the Consolidated Resource Center, CRC. And it doesn't mean the environmental folks still don't have any input, but it's in another bigger staff center. And if the CRC staff approves the project, then it can go to get obligated for funding also. So I don't know how or what or why, and maybe there was some help from our Congress folks, but there was progress on the levee repairs. So it's one step closer to being obligated for funding. So that's the status of the FEMA applications.
So just to summarize then, because there were the two projects, the debris removal, the levee repair. So the levee repair is actually past the environmental review technically then?
So it's in a team.
Okay.
But part of that team is still environmental folks, but there's other folks. It's kind of like the final review team. They call it the Consolidated Resource Center. So instead of just being at the EHP, it's part of the final review team, but there is environmental folks there. So it's one step closer.
But it's progressed.
It has progressed.
Okay, but the other one, the debris removal, is still
pending
With the- with
environmental
the- okay.
review.
Okay.
The one thing that their cost estimators did confirm the costs estimates were reasonable, but yes, it's still with the environmental review team for the debris removal. That is correct. So,
Okay, but progress is being made. So
Yes.
that's good news.
yes.
Okay, do the trustees have any comments or questions? Is there any public comment?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. Okay, there appears to be no public comment.
Okay, well then let's move on to 5.3, discussion of proposed Pacheco Dam expansion. So as I mentioned, when we were talking about the minutes from last meeting we had decided to go ahead and invite the opposition to the dam. We haven't done that yet, as far as I know. Okay, so maybe I'll ask Rochelle to come up to the podium. Did you, no, have you? Okay, all right, so Rochelle has reached out to them, but they have not responded. So the other thing, we did have an advisory board meeting on July 24th. And we did talk about this issue a little bit with amongst our advisory board members. And one of our advisors, Anthony Botello, suggested that we should be involved in commenting on the CEQA process for this new dam. And CEQA, somebody help me with what that stands for. What does that stand for?
The California Environmental Quality Act.
Right,
So-
okay.
And they'll open the document for public discussions. They'll post it, and that's when you make your comments. So.
Okay, so Anthony actually volunteered to reach out to Ryan McCarter and find out what the status is and how we can comment. So that's another thing that we're doing with respect to the dam expansion. There may be some other comment. I don't know. I know there was a reference a little earlier about some problems up there, some repairs that weren't made. So if someone wants to bring that up in public comment, Rochelle or Marcel, this would probably be a good place to do it. You certainly don't have to. But do the trustees have any comments on this item? No? Okay. Is there public comment?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. Okay, Rochelle Beerley, you can approach the podium.
I just wanted to add that we did happen to meet the top resident up at the creek, or up on the below the dam, and he put me in contact with the land manager of where the proposed dam site is, and he sent me a few photos showing the broken spillway, and there hasn't been any real progress. They do feel, and I'm not speaking for them, but this was my takeaway from my discussion, was they feel that it's going to be very difficult to get that dam going forward, because there are, I guess, the Santa Clara County Conservation group that has stepped in and is putting forth a really strong fight against it. Because of wildlife. So it doesn't seem like, they don't feel positive about it, that it's going to go through. But again, I'm not speaking for them. That was just my interpretation of the discussion. I did invite them to come to our meeting, and hopefully in the future they will. But that's my feedback on the issue.
Okay. Thank you, Rochelle. Is there any other public comment on this item?
There appears to be no further public comment.
Okay, then we will move forward to 5.4, update regarding grant and other funding opportunities. So Steve has something for us here.
Yeah, a couple good steps to move forward on. So the county has engaged a firm called California Consulting, and they're one of the largest grant writing firms in the state. And so they identified a grant within the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, which offers both technical and financial assistance to help local communities relieve threats to life and property caused by floods, fires, etc. And this is the hurdle that the district would have, but I think it's worth making the effort. If an NRCS state conservationist can declare a local watershed emergency and initiate program assistance, then you don't have to wait for a disaster to happen. Typically, this can be triggered by the USDA after disasters and floods, but if we reach out to our state conservationists, they can actually initiate this program beforehand. And what the grant does, I just highlighted 4 of the items. I know some of you can't see here in the room, but what these are 4 of the activities that the grant provides is to remove debris from stream channels, reshape and protect eroded stream banks, establish vegetative cover, and repair levees and structures. And it's a new grant that I'm not super familiar with, but I think those are all items that probably most of the folks in this room think are pretty important for Pacheco Creek. So, so that was encouraging. And so the county, recommends for the trustees' direction that we, pursue and see where this can take, take us as far as funding and whatnot. So I will pause there for questions.
So Steve, who is this grant with? Is it a federal grant? Is it state?
It's the USDA Emergency Watershed Protection Program is the program.
Okay, so how is that different from, because you and I had that meeting with someone from a USDA engineer. Is this the same program or is it a different one?
It's actually a different program.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's one I had not heard of either. I guess, like I mentioned, typically it occurs after disasters, but it doesn't have to occur after a disaster. So, as one of the trustees just mentioned, if we can provide some evidence that there's areas along the creek that need debris removal, protected, stream banks, et cetera, looks like it's worthwhile to pursue. I don't know, the chances of getting the grant and all that good stuff, but it encompasses a lot of the things that I think would be real helpful to this creek.
So you mentioned that we need an NRCS state conservationist to declare an emergency, a local emergency.
That's correct.
So our local NRCS person is James Booth?
James Booth, that's
Yeah.
correct. And I don't know if this is an official title, but he would be the person to start with, yes.
Okay. So that's curious because I started with him, and well, maybe he didn't know about this new grant because he put us in touch with this other USDA engineer. And so we were talking about his grant, but this sounds like a different grant altogether.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Yep.
All right. So then what we would need to do probably, correct me if I'm wrong, is we would need the official title of this grant, perhaps, and contact James Booth as a starting point. Is that what we would do?
Correct. Yep. And I can help coordinate that with the trustees or vice versa. Obviously, you already know James Booth. So I'll send, I believe I emailed this information to the folks, the trustees and some other folks here. So, and there was a link I put on in the email. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. So long story short, yeah, we have the information we need to move forward with at least applying. So, and reaching out to Mr. Booth.
Okay, great. Do the trustees have any questions or comments? Is there any public comment?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. Lucinda Flory, can you please approach the podium?
Hello, my name is Lucinda Floric. I live on Lovers Lane, and thank you, Steve, for all your help. I guess I wanted to comment on this one because I don't know if Steve is specifically speaking about the areas on the west side of Lovers Lane Bridge, which is my home. And I've been bringing this up quite a few times already, and the erosions and the trees that fell during the storms last year and the scares that we were in. And so I don't see an urgency, I'm sorry to say, and that's my opinion, that my area is not being looked into more aggressively. I really would like to see this happen so that we do get these, because it's getting really, really narrow, and I'm afraid it's going to breach this winter if we have a larger flood. So I really like to get a pickup on the urgency from the board and try to get this to get repaired and have riprap or improvement done in that area. It seems to be too slow. And I'm afraid it's already August and rains, it's getting colder. So anyway, that's what I'd like to request a little bit of more of a urgency, please, and help. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
If you could please approach the podium, please.
Marcel Bailey, San Felipe Road. About 2 or 3 questions. With this different program, what kind of a time frame are we looking at?
But keep on with the question.
Yeah. So the time frame is for me very important. James must have some ideas. I think it sounds very promising what you read. Then the second question is, does overpowering fishing game?
TBD.
Okay.
Yeah, just for a procedural standpoint, you should address the body, and then they can instruct the staff to answer the questions if at their pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then my last question is kind of like levee repair, has a little bit to do with Lucinda's comment. When we did the levee repair on our side of the creek, we noticed, of course, the other side of San Felipe, just call it Apple Orchard for the time being. They did their own levee repair, and they're probably not getting funding back because they did it to their own specs. So my question is, can a homeowner fix the levee and not get paid just so that we're surviving the winter? So that's kind of like the question that I want to ask and like put it in the room. Thank you.
Okay, so Steve, go ahead and respond, please.
Yeah, so I just, like the rest of the folks here, I think it was about 10 days ago, found out about this grant from our grant folks at a meeting Wednesday. I think it was 2 Wednesdays ago. So I haven't had a chance to look into the time frame. It sounded like the goal of this was to expedite, activities with the permitting agencies and whatnot. But again, I don't have the details. I read through a couple pages, just the general pages, and I tried to kind of summarize what I read and provided it to some folks in this room. So I'll dig into, I don't know the timing. And then regarding levee repairs, at least from a fish and wildlife standpoint, if Fish and Wildlife has a 1601 code where if you need to perform repairs that are related to life safety, and that includes preservation of buildings and livestock and things like that, then at least Fish and Game will allow that to occur. The Water Board and Army Corps, they're a little bit different, but it just would depend on the situation. But Fish and Wildlife, they have a special section in their code that says if you're protecting your property, life safety issues, they do want you to tell them after the fact what you've done, but they'll allow you to do that. So that kind of answers your question a little bit. And yeah, so I'm going to try to find more details on the grant. It sounded pretty encouraging to me. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet since I've been out of town a little bit, but yeah. Oh, one other thing I want to mention to the folks in this room, and I know it's not as maybe specific to this specific area, this segment that we're all, the Pacheco Stormwater District area. However, we did hear from Congresswoman Lofgren's office that the feasibility study to look at adding more volume to Soap Lake, which is where Pacheco Creek flows into. So it's downstream from Pacheco Creek. There's Soap Lake, and then Soap Lake empties eventually into the Pajaro. That's made it past the second step of Congress, so that there's still one more step. And if you get to that final step, then that allows, perhaps, depending on how it is allocated funding, it would allow for a hydraulic study of the area, because we'd have to see how much water is getting into Soap Lake, which would be really good for Pacheco Creek, because a lot of what we want to do with Pacheco Creek is like how much water is actually flowing into the creek and how much can it handle, right? And so, anyways, it's made it through two steps of Congress, essentially, so that, and that's for this Soap Lake extra volume capacity increasing type of study. So just FYI, a little bit of good news on that separate funding source that we're pursuing. So that's all.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Is there any other public comment on item 5.4?
There appears to be no further public comment.
Oh, I guess there is one more.
Rachel Brearley, if you could please approach the podium.
I just had a quick public comment. Have we heard anything regarding the studies that would be pending with these future projects? Are we certain that Valley Water District has not already done these studies since they're proposing a dam? Have we checked? Is it worth contacting them to find out?
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, I know they've done some studies, right? There were some that were cited in that report, that one water report that they put out. I don't know if they're exactly the studies that we would need. I don't know. Steve, I'll let you comment on that.
So it's definitely worth double checking the one water report that Valley Water has for their whole area. The area that Pacheco Creek is in is called the Upper Pajaro Watershed. And so I asked Valley Water 6-8 months ago if they had that type of study, had it been performed for this area. And their answer was no. Does the county have a study that we could use for this area? So that was just one person. So I'll recheck, because it's always very good to double check. And so I'll double check, and I'll be on my list of to-dos. So.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, any other public comment, or we will move on to 5.5?
Okay, there appears to be no further public comment.
I wasn't, this is Marcel Beerley one more time. My question wasn't really all the way answered when I was asking if the grant overpowers Fish and Game, that was one question. But the other one is the homeowner fix. Can the homeowner fix the levee that is right, or whoever the homeowner that owns or is right next to the levee, can they fix? And I got a partial answer with Fish and Game, but not about the water. So I'm just wondering what would happen if the homeowner fixes the levee. What happens then? I'm talking Fish and Game and Water Board, and then there was something else. So I want to understand what happens when you fix as a homeowner the levee or the roads almost and gets to your home is if you fix that yourself, like obviously with big equipment and help and so on. But that's the real question, if that could be answered.
Okay, so Steve, can you clarify? So I think what you said was that Fish and Wildlife has this exception if a if a property owner is doing this to protect their property, the life of their animals, their buildings, so forth. There is this exception that they don't need to get a permit through Fish and Wildlife, but they have to report what they did afterwards. So how does the Water Board enter into this then if Fish and Wildlife has already said that property owner can do this?
Well, I try not to speak for the permitting agencies because I'm not them, obviously. So generally speaking, the Water Board, their goal is to keep sediment and bad things out of the water. Let's see, how should I phrase this? For a project, then depending on the project, I would recommend consulting with the agencies, which is typically Army Corps, Water Board, and Fish and Game, and propose the project and say, this is what we're going to be doing and what permits do we need, and go from there. It's my best answer. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's very frustrating because there are a lot of different agencies involved. But that's probably good advice, I would think, if you want to be sure. Although there is that old expression, sometimes it's better to ask what is it? To apologize rather than ask for permission. How does that?
It's ask for forgiveness instead of permission. I think that is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Don't quote me on that, but there is that expression. So, okay, let's move on to 5.5, update on request to modify reloan from San Benito County. Okay, so quickly to summarize this agenda item. The idea here was that since we are going to probably have some money left over from the original amount that the county loaned us, right? They loaned us a certain amount of money to complete this repair, and that we're going to get reimbursed from FEMA, but the cost will probably come in lower than the initial estimate. So the idea was to perhaps approach the county and ask if we could use the rest of the money that they gave us to perform some other needed important repairs to other sections of the levee that are not covered by the FEMA application. So in the spring, in April, I wrote a letter to an email to a couple of the Board of Supervisors, a couple of them, and asked for this meeting. And then instead of having a meeting, they said that they would put it on the agenda for one of their meetings, for one of their big meetings. I was just asking for a meeting with a couple of them so we could talk about it. And then they said they would put it on the agenda for one of the regular Board of Supervisors meetings. And then we got bumped at some point I can't even remember why. And then the whole thing sort of fell off their radar. So, what I'd like to do now is try again. There were some staffing issues at the county, and so that was one of the reasons, and then there was some budget stuff going on, so that was one of the reasons that I did not pursue this again right away. But what I'd like to do in the next couple of weeks is write another email and propose another meeting with a couple of them, along with Steve, and see where that takes us. So that's my update on this item. Is there any comment or questions from the trustees? Okay, Steve, do you have anything to add to what I just said?
No, I suggest we try to reach out, just as you said, with the two supervisors in this area, which I know you think you've already started, and just refresh that conversation. And yeah, I think we're in a good spot because we kind of know roughly how much funding we'll have remaining. And so we can say, if it's 200,000, what can we do with that? And I will be more than happy to say we could, the creek itself could use some attention in a couple spots that we've already discussed previously tonight, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay, so that is what we will do. Keep posted on that. We will, stay tuned. That's what I'm trying to say. Stay tuned. But is there any public comment on this item?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. Tricia O'Briley, you can please approach the podium.
I just wanted to ask the board here, or the district, if we plan, like, do you think there's ever going to be a discussion that we can have together with the county to figure out how to fix this entire problem versus, the purpose of our district is to prevent floods and to fix flooding events in our proposed area. But as we know, we can only do so much down below. And so I would want to see if we could ever, does the county have an interest in joining our efforts in fixing this entire issue, making it better? We've seen the effects, the positive effects that Valley Water District has had. I don't know how much participation has been involved with the county in Santa Clara County, but when we put our minds to it, we can really fix problems. And I also realize that we can't all do it alone. And if we have a county which supports us, which so far they really have been very supportive of our efforts, and we're very thankful to that, I just say, can we talk further and more in depth about the topic of fixing the problems, like from top to bottom? So I just wanted to see if we can get that discussion going, perhaps.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea. There's a lot to talk about. And so I was trying to do it in pieces and manageable pieces. But yeah, clearly, I think we all want to solve this problem long term. So yeah, I think we should be talking with the county every step of the way. Did the other trustees have any comments?
Yeah, I have one comment. I remember in one of the meetings that we asked into the county to use the rest of the money so we can do the cleanup, and they said no. They're gonna give us only money for fix the levee and clean the debris. Because we asking, I think so. We had, I can't remember when, but we asking for the money, the rest of the money to use and to clean it, and they said no. So sometimes, it's one of the things that I feel bad because I know we need a lot of help. Is what I say, see, we had to go to Sacramento, find something, another organization, to help us, because like everybody knows this is going to happen again, And the only problem that we have, and I think so I mentioned to Steve, people that I met, they say they used to clean in the creek, and they not asking for permits for nothing. But I think so they used to be like 2 or 3 owners, and now we are a lot of owners. And we don't have the resource, the money to rent it, like your husband when he said we had to buy equipment or, so we can do our jobs. We don't have that kind of money right now. But it's something that we had to, I agree, we had to do something. And it's better to prevent than fix that to the problem.
So I'd just like to clarify, they haven't actually said no. They just haven't been willing, well, they have not engaged in the conversation, let's put it that way. So I will try again, but they haven't actually said no, right, Steve? As I don't think that they've actually said no. You can't use the money.
Well, perhaps what Trustee Alfaro was mentioning is initially the way the loan was framed, it might have been more general, but the loan became very specific to, it should apply to the FEMA damaged areas only. And that's the way the loan was framed. So maybe that's kind of what you're referring to. But as far as after the fact, I agree that the county is not officially said no. I don't think that conversation's really been had with the supervisors at this point. So it's still worth asking. So.
Thank you. Did you have a comment? Okay. Okay, we have additional public comment.
Handout, okay? I didn't. Yeah, I think this was a good time. Name is Lucinda again. I think this is a good time, and Rochelle brought it up, and you guys were talking about it. And basically, I think it's kind of like the future and what the infrastructure that the board is, and maybe the county, of what responsibilities they have for helping us. And right now, like Rochelle said, county has helped us a lot. But I think the responsibility is a little bit more than that. Even though I understand that they claim that they are not responsible and they're just helping us. But I think there's been a lot of previous problems in the past. And basically I'm talking about the flooding that happened in 1987. And I brought this 1997, I brought this up at the advisory meeting with Michelle, Rochelle, and everybody there. And these are the links and where I found that information. And basically, it talks about the flooding that happened in 1997 with Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor at the time. And the farmers sued the state, basically. And that was called the Paterno versus the state of California. And at that time, in 2003, the state Supreme Court voted that the state was responsible for taking care of the levees. And so I gave you guys some links. I'll be sending those links to the email address for the Stormwater District, and maybe you can forward it to them, and I can forward it to anybody else who wants it. But I think you should actually read this and actually look at some of this information and see how we fall into these laws and how to join these water acts. And so that's how San Fernando Valley, the Board of Water Districts of California, was implemented. And I think we should get more financial resources, because we as a small board, we don't have resources. We don't have no way of getting money. We need to have somebody who does have the resources. And we're very fortunate that Steve's been with us and helping us a lot. And they have the education, they have the background, they have the resources. We don't. I can try to learn how to do this, but if I'm done tomorrow, we're gonna have to start all over again, And so that's not the way it should be. The infrastructure should be, done with a strong base, and that is with the county. And that's where it should be. And they should be, if you go into this, then you get more federal funding, more state funding, and the county only will pay a small percentage of it. They'll pay the fees, they'll pay a small amount, but it mainly will be coming from their grants and their funding. And so I believe that's the way we should be going.
Okay, thank you. Please do email this. I will look at this case and I will forward it to our counsel, Sean Cameron. Thank you. Okay, is there any other further public comment on this?
There appears to be no further public comment.
Okay, then let's go to 5.6, discuss and approve community cleanup by cheer.
All right, so for folks that aren't aware, CHEER stands for the Coastal Habitat Education and Environmental Restoration. And so it's a nonprofit group, and they spend all their time and resources cleaning creeks and waterways, and they usually do it with the help of volunteers. They mostly clear, I want to clarify, they mostly clear trash, not necessarily branches and things like that, but just trash, because that's what they're sort of permitted to do with the state. But, there are a few specific areas, even in Pacheco Creek, even within this district, that there are pockets of trash that can be cleaned up. And so I did reach out to Herman Garcia. He's the president. And currently they are actually, I didn't put it on my slide, they're actually rescuing stranded fish, mostly steelheads that have gotten stranded because the streams are drying up. So long story short, he suggested trying to come up with some dates in September in the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, if we have volunteers. And he'll mobilize his forces. And he said, well, just, shoot me a few dates. And then he can talk about it with his team. Sounds like they're maybe booked up for the next few weeks, but perhaps sometime in September. I think he said definitely before November he wants to help out, meaning before it starts raining and things. So yeah, that's where it's at. So his team's open to help out.
So, Steve, does he come out and look at the area prior to?
He does. He has a look ahead scouting team, and they go and what they can do is they actually clear paths, not within creeks, but on private property to get to like creek banks and things, so that average folks can just come by and remove things. I think he mentioned just in the last activity that he was involved with, which was on the Pajaro, I believe, within about a month, they removed 10,000 pounds of trash and 98 tires. So I don't think Pacheco Creek has that level of trash, like I mentioned earlier, but there are a couple areas that I think would be helpful. And so I think it's worth it. Maybe it's just a Saturday or Sunday. But I think it would be beneficial just for the creek and the critters, if anything, and just for creek flow, it should help a little bit as well.
So he's suggesting that we set a date before he even comes out and looks to see if it is worth it.
Yeah, I think I'd recommend that however we want to outreach to the neighbors and the residents, and maybe it doesn't have to happen today, but we start targeting a day in September, and that also will indicate to him. Let's just say we pick the second Saturday in September as an example. Then I'll reach out to him and say, okay, Herman, this is what we're thinking, and he'll go out and scope out things. And, maybe we don't make an official date yet, like you're saying, because he might say, well, it's not worth the effort. But then again, if we give him a date, he'll at least start looking and doing the scouting and the look ahead. Yeah, so I'd recommend.
So is he expecting then volunteers from the neighborhood?
He is. He specifically mentioned volunteers. His team, they have 10 to 12-ish folks, but what they do is they stage areas, and then the volunteers will just put the debris in like certain sections, and then his team comes and grabs it and puts it on trucks and things like that. And you know, for bigger items like the tires and whatever, they take care of those bigger items themselves. We can roll the tires to certain areas, but that's kind of how it works. So the volunteers stage the piles, and then his team goes and grabs those piles and removes them. So all for free.
Okay. So we would have to come up with some people to do this.
Correct. That is correct. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. It could be, I've been in groups with him where there was 15 of us, and he had 5 or 6 of his folks, and so.
Okay, and what else would we have to do in order to make this happen? I mean, since this is private property, I mean, we do have the easements, but we would, I mean, there's all sorts of things like waivers of liability, right? And I think that Sean mentioned that last time, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. At a minimum, what I'd recommend is we would send letters to the property owners, addresses, and let them know that, hey, we're going to be on your property in the creek because we have an easement on this date. You know, please be aware so they're not surprised. And other than that, we'd probably want to coordinate with Sean a little bit, see if there's any other issues. I've never had to sign a waiver or anything when I've worked with Cheer. Just FYI, I just showed up with some other volunteers and helped out. So, but at a minimum, I'd recommend we send letters to the property owners where we're going to clean out the creek and let them know. So.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the trustees?
I think so. You sent an email already, right, Steve? I think my wife should receive an email for a cleanup, so we can make a group and help. I think so is the email that you sent.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, that's a good idea. We do have email lists for most of the residents, if that's what you're asking. So we could blast the email to the folks for volunteers, number one, and number two, if we decide to be on certain properties, because only, the district, it's not everyone right adjacent to the creek. But yeah, email would be an efficient way to do it, is to answer your questions.
I think he might be referring to the email that you sent recently, like maybe it was the other day, and I think you copied us. It was an email to Herman that you copied us.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah.
Just to start the discussion with
Right.
Herman, because I want you to be sort of introduced to him and have his email so that you're getting to know him. That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So am I correct in assuming that then the assumption would be that all of us would be involved in this as volunteers as well?
Whomever, the more the merrier for the group. And I would recommend, based on what I've seen, we have try to get at least 10 or 15 folks. And as we've already experienced, I don't know if there's a lot of trash downstream or in this segment, but there is some. So.
And what segment are you?
Just within the water district, which goes from San Felipe, the intersection of the creek and San Felipe Road downstream, approximately a mile, maybe actually about 2 miles, because that's the Pacheco Stormwater District segment, even though the whole segment's more like 20 miles, but.
Right.
So, yeah. So.
Okay.
One more comment. I think it can be a good idea to go and see the condition of the creek. I never walk in the creek. I just saw it, when I drive in, but it can be a good idea,
Yeah. All right. So what do we need to do today then, tonight? Oh, okay. Let's have the public comment then.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9.
Marcel Burley, again. I think this is a great idea. My question is, has it ever been done before? If not, we should start it and see what the outcome is. It doesn't hurt to try. I'll sign up 3 or 4 people right away. I would love to concentrate or see if maybe Steve can organize a drone footage prior to that for that section. That would help us concentrate and maybe only write 5 letters versus 50. And then let's do it. I think I mean, if we're planning out a month from now, mid-September, Saturday, I don't know, Sunday was probably not so good, but there's other days that are good. And I think we should just do it, my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Okay, there appears to be no further public comment.
I have one comment. So if we go and volunteer and walk through, clean up part of this creek, and we find that some of the areas are like a dumping ground from, let's say, trailers that are being inhabited out there because they have no other address to live at, but they use the creek as a dumping ground. What can we do at that point?
I recommend if we find some locations in your hypothetical situation where we think folks are purposefully doing illegal activities, then we should document it and reach out to county code enforcement, and they can make their own visit and go back. And we've actually made some progress in this general area in some locations in that regard. But if we observe that, we should definitely reach out to the county's code enforcement and inform them about those situations. So,
Because I'm thinking if we're going to go in there and clean out this creek, and let's say we do that in September, but in October, that mess is there again. Let's say in November, that mess might be there again.
yeah, it sounds like you're suggesting it's a code enforcement issue, and
Okay.
we have one code enforcement person, and she's extremely busy, but we have made progress in a couple areas out there. I'm not going to get specific, but there was quite a few trailers in one location, and that's been reduced, but I think there's some more progress that needs to be made. But yeah, we should definitely reach out to code enforcement if we've encountered those situations. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
This is Lucinda again, Lucinda Floric. That was a good question, Paula. And what I just wanted to add to it is that before we go to this walkthrough and cleanup, is we need the resources of how to address this issue and how to remove the item if it's large. And, we can take a picture of it, but I think it'd be good to have a resource of a step-by-step, okay, we find this, we can't physically remove it ourselves. What are the resources and how do we go through to remove that object before we do it? That way, we just don't go, what are we going to do now? We actually know what to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Would you like me to address the question? So the way Cheer works is you show up and he's predetermined locations where he thinks there's trash buildup, and his team actually supplies just generic big black garbage bags essentially. I'd recommend bringing some gloves. I think when we've done it with Granite Rock, they actually supply gloves, but just your standard garden gloves. Ideally, there's some kind of waterproofish type gloves. Just that's my 2 cents, perhaps some rubberish type of gloves. But he actually just provides the big black bags to the volunteers, and you literally just go and you have a bag and you just put trash in it. So it's not real big objects. When there's tires and things, you just roll the tires to certain locations. If you see kind of a big, I don't know, metal pole things, you can usually just tell their team about the larger objects. They're more well equipped to answer your question for the larger objects. For us, it's really just small debris that you could hold in your hand, essentially, that's not super bulky or heavy, and you just place those in bags or piles. Sometimes you just place them in piles. There's areas. And so that's kind of the scope of how it works. Yeah, right. And so correct, right. It's just trash. And if you had any questions, we don't touch oil or liquidy objects or hazardous type objects. We don't. It's just basic trash. They also don't deal with hazardous. Well, I shouldn't say that. Our teams haven't handled, and I haven't seen them handle the hazard materials. Although they might be able to, but we don't. The volunteers don't, to answer your question. So just basic kind of trash things, I guess, is the best way I can phrase it. So.
Okay, so what is it that we need to do tonight then?
So if you want to give direction, just general direction, I'll say, I can reach back out to Herman, or anyone that was on that email could also reach back to Herman. You can tell the trustees can give me direction to suggest some dates in September. I don't know if the three of you wanted to talk, if you're going to be out of town or not out of town. Not that the three of you have to be volunteers, because you're already volunteering quite a bit of your time as it is at these meetings. But just provide me general direction. I can reach back out to Cheer and say, yes, the district would like to tentatively have some volunteers ready in mid or the third week of September. That's all we really need to do tonight. So.
Right, because, even if we came up with a specific date, he needs to be available too.
Correct, exactly.
And his team.
Yeah.
So I think that we can do that. We can say, yes, reach out to him and look for a date in mid to late September.
Okay.
Right?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Paula's got lots of volunteers.
Great. That sounds good.
Okay. Okay. I guess we do have one additional public comment.
This is Rochelle Beerley. I had to step out for a second. Is this a creek-wide cleanup or just our district cleanup? Is my first question.
This would just be within our district.
So that little area. Okay, and then would there be a possibility that we can orchestrate a creek-wide cleanup? That would be my thought. I think that would be worth, pursuing. And I don't know how, but perhaps that might be something to plan.
That's an idea for the future. Okay, unless there's any additional public comment, let's move on to 5.7. And this is discuss and approve posting of questionnaire on social media. So during the last meeting, it was suggested, I think by you actually, Rochelle, that we consider putting together a questionnaire that we could post on social media. We have our page on the Nextdoor app. And I guess the idea would be to poll, ideally, people who live in the district, although I guess anybody could respond if we put it on Nextdoor, right? And I'm not sure what we would put in this questionnaire. We didn't really flesh out this idea, but that's where this agenda item comes from. So any thoughts about that from the trustees?
I'm just questioning, what would the questionnaire be regarding?
Well, that's a good question. I don't remember now. It was an idea. Rochelle, do you have any ideas? Would you like to, if you'd like to approach the podium?
I believe the main issue we wanted to find out is do we want to improve flooding in our area? Let's start with the real basic question that our district was formed on. How many people are bothered, or do, annual floods bother residences in San Benito County? If so, kind of deal. But it would be to see if we have public support and if people are as frustrated as we are to try to fix the flooding issue. So.
I want to add to that a little bit of a comment, because I know a lot of the people that were affected by the flood probably have moved on. So we have newcomers within the area. They might not know what they're going to experience if we go through this flood. If we put out a questionnaire, they have no idea what they're going to be answering or asking. And I still see a lot more signs going up right now on property for sale. So that means more new people that will not have any idea what's going on.
That's a good point. Maybe we should just use the Nextdoor right now. Maybe we should use the Nextdoor page to get volunteers for this creek cleanup. Maybe we should start there, see how that works, right? See if our page is getting any traffic, see if people respond. Because this is something that we can get people excited about, maybe. I don't know. Something tangible that they can do. And then maybe from there we can move on to, different things like encouraging people to come to the meetings, of course, and volunteer in other ways. I don't know. Any other ideas? Okay. Well, once we have a date for the creek cleanup, we could certainly put something out, right? And in addition to contacting property owners directly, property owners within the district, we could certainly put something on Nextdoor and maybe gain some experience using that platform, see how it works. Is there any public comment on this issue?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. There appears to be no public comment.
Okay, we will move on then to the next item, determining the next meeting date. So this meeting is a special meeting. Our next regular meeting would be soon. It would be August. Okay, I don't have the date in front of me, but it would be probably in a couple of weeks, right? So that would be it's the fourth Monday. So this is the first Monday. Okay, so it would be, so the question is, do we want to meet again on August 26th? Or do we want to push it out to the end of September? Or do we want to choose a different date?
Do we want to meet before we do the cheer volunteer?
I think so on the 26th, it can be a good day.
Okay, so we will go ahead and keep our regular meeting date of August 26th. Okay. All right then. I don't think we need to vote on anything because that's our regular meeting date. So, okay, then finally, oh wait, I didn't call for any public comment. Is there any public comment on 5.8, the next meeting date?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. There appears to be no public comment.
Okay, finally, 5.9, discussion of future agenda items. Before we get to that, I do want to put out there something that is not going to be on the next agenda, in case people didn't hear, and that is the election. So last time we did have an item about the about whether we were going to have an election in 2024. And it turns out, I guess, that county staff got further information, and we are not going to have an election for the water district in 2024. The elections have to be in odd years, apparently. So no election this year. I guess the next election would be in 2025, and then we would have the 2 seats that would come up. Well, we'll talk about it more as it gets closer. But I just wanted to put that out there because it was kind of left dangling. And so that's, so the board will stay, the Board of Trustees will stay in its current configuration for 1 more year until November of 2025. It's my understanding. Okay, so future agenda items. Are there any, would the trustees like to suggest any items for our next meeting in August?
Regarding the grants. We can try
Reaching out to Jane's Booth regarding the grants to try and clean up the
Okay,
creek.
okay.
Yeah.
Was there anything else?
And then try and see if we can get somebody from the opposing, for the dam, the opposition side.
Yes, well, okay, so this is the opposition to the Pacheco Dam, the expansion. My understanding is Rochelle has sent 1 email. If you like, if you want to send me the contact information, I can send another email. Or if one of the trustees would like to do that, would one of you like to do that? If we send if you get the,
I can do it.
okay, all right. So Trustee Escona has agreed to email the dam expansion opposition group. So Rochelle, maybe you can get the information from Rochelle, because I don't actually have the contact information. So that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so getting back to future agenda items. Are there any other ideas from the trustees? I mean, we always have an item about the levee repairs and the FEMA applicant. That's always on
That's
there.
always there.
So,
And especially like right now, we are going into a real small, narrow window because it's going to come fall and then winter.
yes.
We just need to get moving on a lot of these things.
Okay. Is there any input, any public comment on the next agenda? What should be on it?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card, and on Zoom, use the raise hand icon feature by dialing *9. Rochelle Brearley, if you could please approach the podium.
I just wanted to see if we can put on our agenda for next time, kind of like the emergency item, which is the repair of that southwest part of the levee, which is apparently on the verge of collapse. I think that holds warrants a little bit of attention from us to figure out how we do this. And perhaps I'm being repetitive, and that's part of the county outreach, but I wanted to make sure that we do talk about that. And I also would like to recommend that maybe once the trustees become familiar with information on that Paterno case, I think we should discuss it in further depth and find out where we stand with that. So those are my suggestions.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Okay, there appears to be no.
Oh, there is
sorry.
one other.
It's too big. Marcel Burley. Since we did the clean out and the levee repair, my suggestion right from the beginning was to come up with some kind of maintenance. If we're not working on something with maintenance on this creek, it is wasted time to every 5 years repair. And so preventative maintenance is very important, and we need to get something started to see what we need. That grant is certainly something to start with, but I think Santa Clara County has that already managed, and we can copy or whatever, try to find out and talk more to see how they're doing it or what agency's doing it. And I think we have some information already, but I think we need to talk more about it, maintenance of the creek, so that it doesn't happen that often.
Yes, thank you. So we actually have talked about maintenance in the past. At a past meeting, Steve presented a maintenance plan and a maintenance agreement, actually, that Monterey County, I believe it's Monterey County, has with Fish and Wildlife. So we have a sample. So we kind of have an idea of what a maintenance plan would look like. The problem is, what do we use to pay for the maintenance? That's the problem. That's always the problem. So that's why we're talking about grants and going back to the county for more money. And so, so anyway, we have talked about that. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good idea. So, okay. You have one other idea, or?
Yes, I mean, the other idea is what Lucinda brought up. If the state owns the levee, maybe they can also do the maintenance.
Yeah,
So I
the
think-
state does not own the levee.
No?
No, it's private property.
Okay.
So, but I will read the Paterno case and I will forward it to our counsel, Sean Cameron, and maybe next time we can discuss it.
Perfect.
So-
That would be an idea.
Okay, anything else from the public regarding future agenda items? Okay, then the only thing left to do is adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion that we adjourn today's meeting of August 5th.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time, August 26th.